Okay, welcome everybody at the ZyLAB webinar on efficient handling of subject access requests, which we have organized together with our valued partner Informa. I also welcome, let me take it to the next slide. There we go. I also welcome Tom Gilsonen. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Jan.
And so it's Tom and me today. Tom is the director of Informa, and I'm Chief Strategy Officer at ZyLAB. And today we will discuss how organizations can handle subject access requests and also future requests under the GDPR. Yeah, this also is very similar to what we also call differently, which I'll tell you in a second, for other government information requests. We're going to first discuss the terminology, then we will briefly discuss the similarities between public disclosures and subject access requests and eDiscovery. Then we will explain why we feel that automation is needed to handle the challenges of the public disclosure. We'll then discuss some of the best practices where we use automation, and we'll talk a little bit about some customer references and some more conclusions. Okay, so what are we talking about? We're talking about subject access requests, as it's called in Ireland and in the United Kingdom and Australia, and New Zealand, I presume. These type of requests are called Freedom of Information Act requests in the United States when they are dealing with federal government requests. In state and local, they're called PRA, Public Records Acts, or Sunshine Laws. And very soon, we will also all have to deal with the GDPR, the General Data Protection Act of the European Union, which will try to harmonize all of the different local privacy and data protection acts in Europe and come up with one standard set of rules which is more or less similar in all of Europe. So this is a very hot topic. And from here, I would like to take it and give the word to Tom. So maybe, Tom, you can start explaining a little bit about the current Irish laws.
So I really, I suppose, the key point for any of the listeners there who would be very familiar with the Data Protection Acts, because, as I say, it's not something new. I think that it's a very hot topic at the moment because of GDPR, and I suppose uniquely in terms of Brexit and the impact of Brexit. So really what I think it's important for listeners to understand that in one sense nothing has really changed, but what has changed is the way people manage their access requests and process. And that's really what people need to be concerned about. There's a bit of a feeling, I suppose, across certainly Ireland and possibly the UK of, with the GDPR, it's everywhere. There's conferences day in, day out about this, and there is that sort of millennium bug type scaring going on at the moment. But as I say, I don't think it's anything to be worried about or feared of. It's really just a case of, getting a better understanding of your information and how that's going to be managed going forward, and that's really what we're here to chat about today, is to give an understanding of what a kind of a single solution can do to fulfill these access requests in a timely manner and to ensure that you've been as thorough in the process as possible.
Yep.
So maybe next, yeah, thanks, Jan. So just to very quickly step through the process, it's very straightforward, and it probably follows the EDRM model, which is around electronic document record management process. So it's really just to fulfill the steps from that initial request and taking into account the time restrictions for fulfilling that request to providing a system that's going to get through that information as quick as possible. And that's something that we have found ourselves, Informa, as a provider, where we're for years and years been providing clients with access information systems, but now it's about the management of that. And I think probably the biggest thing that we seem to hear about is the challenges in terms of functions like redaction and the ability to do auto redaction and so on to get through these requirements in a timely process. Next screen, Jan.
Yep.
So we know the issues that are coming on board. It's really about the completeness, and I suppose what we would have found in the past is where access requests were predominantly, to a large extent, paper-based. So they were where emails and documents were printed off a system and then basically sent to a photocopier, redacted manually, and photocopied or scanned back in through a system. So that's whilst it's diligent to the extent of the documents that you're actually dealing with at the time, but it's very limited, and that's where the big challenge is now, because of the volume of data that's coming into play in terms of email, social media, and so on, to being able to handle that volume of information. It's no longer possible to do that through basic retrieval systems and through printing and scanning and manual redacting. That's just not a runner anymore. So and having a process that you're able to defend in court, or other, is extremely important now, and that's really where we have found that our clients are benefiting significantly, is that they have a repeatable process that allows them to get through this challenge on an ongoing basis. Next on that, please, Jan. So this is just a very quick graphic there that just gives you an understanding of, I suppose, the upward curve, and that's obviously going to kick up significantly in 2018 and thereafter. People don't have to pay for access requests anymore, so they can submit their request at zero cost. So that's obviously going to encourage more access requests going forward. And the timelines are tight. So most organizations are seeing this already, particularly, say, in the financial and the banking sector. If you take examples of the current tracker mortgage issues and so on. So all these issues have a bearing on public access requests, and so that's, as I say, is a graphic that's showing where it's going, and it's probably going to spike significantly higher over the next coming years. Okay, Anne. So we've already spoke about the increasing numbers. It's in terms of the data, we all know it. If we think of an individual's email account, probably what they might have had as a few hundred emails 10 years ago in their inbox for a month or a year, and now they're into thousands and hundreds and thousands. So it's a volume issue that there's no getting away from. We also would have seen, if any people were at the Discovery conference in Ireland there recently, is the challenges around cloud and cloud systems, social networking, etc. They are becoming a fundamental part of everyday communication in business. So that's whether it's WhatsApp, or if it's text and so on, and Facebook, and so these are all to be addressed, and it's becoming more and more difficult to manage these solutions and these systems under one roof. We also are dealing with a geography issue in terms of the jurisdictions that we're crossing over and covering, and that's something that's just going to be, I suppose, another challenge on top of everything with the upcoming Brexit over the next few years. So again, people are looking to get on top of that as soon as possible. next slide there, please, Jan. Yeah, and you might help me on this one here, actually, in terms of descriptions.
Yeah. Well, what we see is that when the government is protecting their own interests by defining which documents or sections of documents have to be withheld because it would damage the organization or somebody in the government or individuals by disclosing certain information. These things are called either exceptions or exemptions or redactions. In some cases, dealing with personal information in the United States, it's called personal identifiable information. If it's related to healthcare, it's called protected health information. But all of this information can be withheld for different grounds. But what we see is that different countries, different states, sometimes even different cities or areas have different rules. And so this makes it very complex to keep track of all of the reasons why one should withhold a certain document. And when a page is withheld or a document is withheld, or when a redaction is applied, one also has to indicate why it is applied, and one has to refer to a particular regulation and a particular rule. And sometimes there's different levels of redaction. For instance, under the GDPR, one can completely blackline information, but it's also possible to use pseudonyms where one replaces a name with a number or a reference to an individual for which the reference tables hold elsewhere. And that makes it very complex to do that properly without making any errors. It could also be that the government is under litigation, and for that reason one does not intend or should not provide certain documents to certain parties. There's different deadlines for responding, there's different cost structures, there's different redaction rules, and different disclosure formats. Some governments have certain disclosure formats under certain regulations, others don't. And this makes it all very complex to manage properly, and therefore one needs automation. And a good example is, for instance, if one has disclosed a document with a certain redaction on it, in the future you do not want to disclose that document again, but then without a redaction, because it could initially harm the person or the individual or the department you were trying to protect in the first disclosure. This type of dependencies can only be tracked by automated systems. And also only automated systems can provide the level of quality for redactions that's required, and that's really way higher than if human beings do this. Okay, I will show you very briefly the process. The way how this is done is that data that has been self-collected can be uploaded to a server. So these could be like PST files or other email boxes or file shares that you zip together, where you have either self-collected or a department collects, or you take data from a certain server, you upload it to the ZyLAB ONE platform, to your personal environment, which is highly secure. Then you can also apply certain values of metadata, like the individual name, which we call a custodian, or some other metadata that you can use for later reference. And then the data is automatically processed, so we make every individual component searchable. And we can also do this by directly collecting from certain locations. We can collect from Office 365, Microsoft Exchange, email servers which are either on premises or in the cloud, but also from content management systems like Google, SharePoint, Alfresco, and many other different repository types. We can also do a search-based collection where we index file systems or legacy email collections as MSGs with the ZyLAB information management platform, and then you can do a search-based collection where you only collect files with certain keywords in it. Now, after this collection, which is in a majority a fully automated process where we also do auditing and logging, and we calculate hash values, so you know for sure that everything is done in a defensible way. Again, remember, this technology originates from the world of eDiscovery, where very high demands are set for with respect to defensibility and quality control. Next thing what we do is we make every individual component searchable, and we can do that for more than 700 file formats. If there are compound files or compressed files stored in a container, like a PST file or a zip, we unpack them. We unpack recursive or embedded objects. So if you have an MSG and a Keller item with a couple of attachments, we make every and each individual component searchable. If we're dealing with images or non-searchable PDFs, we automatically OCR them. If you need, we can OCR them even in 4 directions, which is very beneficial for blueprints and construction drawings. We can index the content of audio, sound files, and then you can search them as well. We analyze email threads and conversations. We can identify which ones are missing. We can do deduplication, which is very useful because if you have a very large subject access request and you're asking 50 people in your organization, there's a very large probability that they will all come up with a lot of duplicate data. And you don't want to review all these duplicates, so you want to remove them if you're dealing with exact duplicates. We also do a near duplicate analysis. We can do entity extraction. Which is based on text mining technology, and which actually allows us to identify individual names, company names, product names, but also social security numbers or personal identifiable numbers or text numbers or bank account numbers, which you may want to, or phone numbers, which you all may want to redact later on. So we do this automatically, so you don't have to do that manually. We classify documents automatically by different subject matters, but also whether they are in the category responsive or not responsive, or in the category confidential or legally privileged, or maybe subject to some kind of exemption or withholding rule. We can do topic modeling, we can do machine translation, and we have a very, very flexible production formats, and I'll show you how this works in a live demo at the end of the webinar. The duplication can be done by custodian, by matter, and we're using hash values, which can be calculated in different ways, either for only the attachments or for maybe the entire MSG. The near duplicate detection, we actually look at the content, and we will pop up documents where the content is similar, which is what you see a lot when a Word file is saved as a PDF before it's emailed. Then there's a high similarity, but they're never exactly exact similars. So we can identify those. We can create a collection report. So you have an overview of everything you collected. We can automatically categorize the documents by using both full text queries, but also by using machine learning, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. And then what we'll do is after the analysis, the processing, which is a fully automatic process, the way how you do it is that you discuss how you want this to be set up with Informa, and then Informa sets up an environment for your organization where everything is preset the way how you want it. With your particular redaction rules, your particular classification rules, and other rules. And then what we show the user when the user logs in is a very user-friendly overview where all the data is organized in different facets. And we can also define these facets depending on your requirements. So the facets could be the data owner, the source, is it from an email server, file share, the file types, is it a PDF or Word or Excel sheet? Is it potentially exemption? For what reason? Is it health information? Is it data protected personal information? Is it legally privileged? Is it any other reason why you want to withhold it? And then we can also look at the different email domains and subject matters. And I'll show you a little bit more about it. One of the first things that's done in these type of FOIA requests is to take out any type of privileged information. So if there is any legally privileged information, for instance, communication with the city attorney, or any other information where you discuss whether or not you are obliged to disclose certain data, you can take it out by searching for email names or for the content of the email. Any information which is subject to personal identifiable information, protected health information, or data that needs to be protected under the General Data Protection Regulation, like somebody's religion or philosophical preferences, or whether somebody is a member of a union or political preference, all information types that can no longer be disclosed under the GDPR. For those, we can recognize certain rules, and we can either completely redact it, or, as in this case, pseudonymize it, where we replace the name with like suspect 1 or individual 1 or individual 2. The search is very powerful in our platform. We can have very long queries. We have a very large variety of Boolean search techniques with proximity, directed and non-directed, wildcards, quorum search. And you can define a query which is multiple pages long. You can embed everything. You can nest queries. We do fuzzy search. We do combinations of full text search with metadata search. We can do regular expression search. So it's very, very, very powerful. Now, based on all of these classifiers, certain automatic tagging decisions can be made. So documents can either be reviewed in the full context of the email conversation. And as you can see here on the top left, there's some red which says unknown message. And this means that in this whole email conversation, there is either one email deleted, or this email originates from a user from who we do not have yet collected the information. So you also see what's missing. And then if an email contains attachments, the whole document is kept together as a family. And regardless which part of the email or the document you find, you can always look at the contents of the entire document. You can define your text as responsive or potentially privileged or relevant or not. All of this is user customizable. You can create annotations, and you can also see all the metadata. So it's very, very information rich. Like I said, we can do the audio search. So this is a phonetic search where we take audio files and then we convert them into phonemes. And then whenever you search certain words, we actually convert those words from text also into phonemes, and then we do a kind of fuzzy match. And this works very well for data which is either noisy or for particular type of names that may not be in any kind of dictionary. And this works very well also in low quality audio, or when dealing with non-native English speakers. And it does not give you a transcription of the audio files or the audio component of the video, but it does allow you to search in it, and that's very powerful to identify what are relevant documents. We have clients in Europe and in the United States who use this to search in the transcripts or the audio recordings of the council meetings, and then they can very, very quickly pick up the council meetings where certain issues are discussed, and then if needed, they can transcribe it or disclose it.
Yeah, and just to cut across you on that, actually, that's a very interesting topic that has been talked about a lot recently, because I suppose in times gone by, people associated the requirement to get a rough translation of documents before they could review them, whereas obviously this allows the ability to run searches to find potentially responsive documents, and only at that stage go through the cost of translating.
Yeah, absolutely, or transcribing them. Yeah, and one other application that's very popular, especially in the United States, is to search body cams from the police department. And I don't know if you've seen that in Ireland, but also here in Europe, a lot of police officers now have to wear these body cams, and everything they record is being stored and archived. And there have been a lot of subject access requests to search in those type of recordings to find certain type of situations. And actually the majority of these type of public records requests in the United States now is this type of requests from activist groups into the police department, into audio recordings and video recordings.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Now, unfortunately, not everybody is trained to be a really skilled searcher. So Boolean queries are hard to define for certain people. And the other problem is that it's either a feast or a famine. You find either everything or nothing. And so it's very hard to search with Boolean searches and find all the relevant documents. Also with Boolean searches, you never know if you have found everything, or you don't even know how much of the relevant documents you found. You know what the precision is, so you know how good your query is, but you never know if there are any documents that are relevant that you've missed, which are the unknown unknowns. And what we've done recently, and I encourage you to download our white papers on this topic or to look at our website, is we have been working with machine learning, where we use machine learning as the new search. Now, this kind of picture explains the situation. In the past, in order to reach like 100% recall, we would have to take a highly skilled searcher or an analyst that could use standard search, metadata search, advanced search like the fuzzy search, the quorum search, and all these number search and all these other advanced search technologies that we have in our product. Then, by using advanced processing, we would be able to increase the recall even more because we would make audio files searchable, or we would translate documents from foreign languages into English and make them searchable. We would OCR drawings and bitmap and make them searchable, or unpack embedded objects. And then a highly skilled searcher would end up with 70–80% recall when they spend a lot of effort in it. And then maybe you can find the last 20% by using machine learning. Now, the way how we've changed this is now we can have reviewers or searchers that can start with a standard search or a metadata search, find maybe 10–20% of the relevant documents very quickly. Then we take those relevant documents that they found and we teach them to a machine learning algorithm. And then the machine learning is going to find all the other documents that look like this document and presents it back to the end user. The end user reviews them, says, well, this is a good one, this is a bad one, this is a good one, bad one. And then we build a classifier again. And we do this a couple of times. And I got a great video on this whole process, which you can also download from our website. But what we do is that we go to this process in this whole field. Now, let me show you this here in my there we go, handling subject access request. Oh, sorry for this. Here we go. So here is the video. So what we did is we took the Enron data set, which you probably know, and we took two individuals. One individual is a highly skilled searcher, ZyLAB consultant, who knows all of the secrets of our search engine. And we asked this individual to find all the documents in the Enron set which are related to judicial verdicts. And as you can see, the user starts building queries here, like name equals start.pdf or name is TIFF. Tries different keywords, gets different results. Sometimes it's 1,000, the other time it's 4 or 5. You can see that it's a very skilled user. The user is now starting also with a quorum search, so it's 10 off and then the court. And by going to this process, this user finds a number of documents. And then at the same time, we took somebody who is totally not skilled with the ZyLAB search engine, and we ask them to look up some of these documents and then take some relevant documents and teach them to the computer. You see in parallel, our power user is starting to use regular expressions and making very, very complex queries just to be able to find as many relevant documents as possible. We let these users search and work together on this whole process. And the process is very simple. The one user is searching, the other user is just reviewing the documents. And every time when the user has reviewed 20 documents, the computer creates a new classifier, looks up more relevant documents and returns them, and then goes to this entire process. And typically what we see is that after 2 or 3 machine learning cycles, the computer only returns relevant documents until there are not enough relevant documents left anymore. And then the computer is also returning documents that are almost relevant. And during this entire process, the computer keeps track of the quality of the process. And if we go to the end now, and I will show you this, there we go. And this is actually very interesting where we are now, because in this process, you can see all the different dots here are the machine learning cycles. You see that the computer has found somewhere around 100 documents. You see that this line here shows asymptotic behavior. So at a certain moment, it's flattening out. It's not finding any relevant documents anymore. You see that the precision of the return set, so the precision of the documents that the computer finds, goes from 0 to very high, and then at a certain moment there are not enough documents, relevant documents anymore, and then the computer is also returning non-relevant documents until this graph is 0, and when it's 0 you can more or less presume that you have found like 80, 90, 90 to 95% of all the relevant documents. We also keep track of precision and recall graphs. Now this whole process is a very powerful process where what we see at the end of the day is that computers are not only 15 to 20% faster than manual review, they also find more information, because what we've seen in almost any experiment that we do is that we find 50 to 300% more relevant documents. And what is very important, we can measure very accurately what the percentage is of all the relevant documents that you have found. So if you want to make sure that you found 80 or 90%, or you don't want to be sure that you get surprised because certain documents are not found, then this is absolutely the way forward for searching. And this is a method which originates from US federal courts, where we used it, but we've also used this in a lot of other court and large investigations, so there's a lot of international case law around this. Now, after this whole process, when documents are reviewed and redacted, it's possible to produce them as PDFs, searchable, non-searchable, as TIFFs, and then all the redactions are automatically burned in. If you have to deal with an audio file or a video file which you cannot redact, then you can also put in a placeholder and refer to different types of files. And then we automatically generate these PDFs and TIFFs from all the different electronic file formats that are in the system, including spreadsheets and PowerPoints, Word files, etc. Now, after that, it's also possible in our system to take former historic disclosures and share them with the public by making them searchable. And this can be very efficient, because this, if certain disclosures are searchable, then requesters can first look at the website if a request has ever been made, what information was disclosed. And in most of the cases, this will probably be sufficient, so it will save you and your organization from another request that you may get. So it saves you work. And this is actually a site by the EPA in the United States. And if you search for NSCEP and APA, you find the sites, and you can search in a very, very large amount of documents. Okay, now I promised you a short demo. So this here is the software. Let me see, is it working? I may have to log in again. No, it's working. So you get into the system, you browse, you can see all the different facets here. This is a data set where we have different review batches from different individuals that are reviewing certain documents. The documents that are potentially exempt are tagged and automatically recognized. So these blue ones contain personal identifiable, personal health information. The orange ones are probably confidential, and the green ones contain personal information. There's documents reviewed, not reviewed. There's documents responsive, not responsive. And you can see that all of these different tags give you an indication of what there is. You can also use this as a workflow system. So if you have certain documents and you think they are potentially exempt, but you're not sure, then you can also tag them as potentially exempt, and then somebody from the legal department or a specialist or your external counsel can then look at those documents and determine whether they are actually exempt or not. Or maybe you can ask them to redact them. If you want to, you can also see the departments, etc. Now, if I want to look at the documents, I can just open these documents, and now I get a document list. And in this document list, you can open the documents. Then you see a copy of the original document, and you can tag it whether it's responsive or not responsive. And you can view the entire document. You can also view all of the metadata that comes with the document. If it belongs to a document family or a conversation, you will also see this. And I got a couple of examples here, for instance, of some of the queries. For instance, this query here shows you our documents that have been recognized and that contain certain redactions. This is, for instance, an employee handbook here, and I can go to different there we go. Oh, different text here. I think I'll have. Let me take this one here out. Okay, I had a filter set, so let me take that filter out. The redaction. So security number. There we go. Now I look at the documents. Here's the document. And what you see here is actually a redaction. There's a couple of redactions. This is a redaction under Texas Government Code 552. And if I put my mouse on top of it, I can actually look under the redaction to see what's there. You can actually say, okay, that's not a redaction. Well, that's correct. But this is the phase where records managers or administrators from the government are applying the redactions. So you can actually use this as a quality control process. So you can look under this redaction if it is actually a proper redaction and if the rule is properly mentioned. If it is, then we leave it. If not, we can change it. I can double click it and then I can change the redaction, or I can move it, but only when it's final, when it's burnt in, then we're making the redaction final and we remove all the text underneath the redaction. You see here a social security number. And this has been automatically recognized. So the black one is a manual redaction. This is an automatic redaction where a certain social security number is recognized, and under the Texas Government Code 552.102, this can be redacted. So, and it's very easy to look at different documents, go to the next document, and of course it's easier to review redactions instead of having to draw them every time. So this is part of how we apply the redactions. Like I said, we have a very powerful search, which also allows you to, let me show this first. From the redactions, we can also make reports. One of the, I don't know if this is the case in Ireland, Tom, but in the United States, when data is disclosed, the government actually has to explain or justify which documents have been redacted and why. So they have to create a report which they call a VONE index. And in a VONE index, what we can do is we can take all the documents that we're going to disclose, and then we can generate a redaction report. And the way how I do this is that I for each document, I indicate whether it is reviewed or not, what's the document, and then I also keep track of all the redactions that have been applied, why they have been applied, and where they are. And this includes the justification of the redaction. This is something which is mandatory in the United States, and we have this automatically out of the box in our software. Now,
yes, you're right. Reports around redaction reasons are often, they're, while not mandatory in all cases, they're very useful, because obviously when if there is queries in relation to documents and reasons for redaction, to have that reported on is very beneficial to the organization fulfilling the access request.
Yeah. Well, you don't want to do that manually and then forget one. And if it's already in the computer, it's a major time saver, money saver if you generate it automatically. I got a couple of other queries here. This is a great fuzzy query where we're searching for a person with a certain name, Khalid or Mohammed, and then what you actually see is I put this tilde2 there, which means that we are looking for a certain fuzzy value, and if I open these documents, you actually see that I find, sorry, I need to go here. Where is it? Oh, I'm clicking too fast. Oh, there it was, I saw it. Oops. Well, yeah, you actually see the name of the individual here, and let me blow it up a little bit, and there we go. There we go. And even if I misspelled the first character and the second name, then you can see I can still find them. Now, if you want to try this yourself, I invite you to do this yourself. You can sign up for a demo on our website, and then you get access details, and you can try all of this yourself. Okay, Tom, I'll give it back to you.
Okay, thanks, Jan. I suppose one of the very important things is to get away from the perception that your access request has to be a very significant or large one. I think what Jan has demonstrated through the system there is the ability to have a system or a process in place that's repeatable. So, and that's what's happening. Our clients that are using this technology is that they are beginning to apply it to very small sets of data. So whether that's a box of hard copy and run it through, or whether that's a large collection of electronic and paper documents, either ways it's very obtainable. Also, I think there's the important thing to understand is that the majority of clients in Ireland and certainly ours in the UK are start off as SaaS subscription-based clients who are doing this on small projects to give them the comfort to get an understanding of how the product works. And then there's a very scalable solution that's available to any client when they're subscribing to the ZyLAB platform. And that's something that we can follow up with at any stage if anybody's interested in talking to ourselves, Informa, in terms of that. Okay, that's next.
Yep.
So basically, how to get started, as the first point says there, it's very quick to get up and running. Whether it's, as I say, a SaaS or it's on-premise, we can typically get a project up and running within a matter of days or a week at most, where we can deploy the software on-premise or via the cloud. And what Informa will do is act as your project manager or service provider to assist you on this. So that support includes the setup of your platform, so customizing the tags, setting out the workflow of the process of the review for your SaaS, how you make the productions once you have completed your access request and fulfilling that. So we will take you through the full end-to-end, and that will include training with documentation. So we're very much there to handhold as particularly at the early stages, and the ZyLAB system has been designed, and the go-forward plans are to have it as a DIY management system whereby clients will be able to run this process end to end themselves. So really there to get you up and running, get you started, and get you with a repeatable process in place. Next slide there, Dan.
Yep.
So as I say, in terms of, you can see there are a couple of references that are more global, but already we've had a lot of success in dealing with a number of government agencies, which would include the Department of Health, who have been using our system, the original ZyLAB Information Access Platform for the last 10-12 years, but have since moved across into ZyLAB ONE, which is the platform that Jan has demonstrated to you. They're using it for a mix of both eDiscovery and FOIA requests, and also for internal legal advice, so that they can reference back to previous advices given. We have it in a number Insolvency Service of Ireland, RTE, so a number of organisations that have very diverse needs that we can support in this whole area. Next slide. So yeah, so basically your self-service is something that that we're going to bring you across. So these are some of the key benefits to the ZyLAB system. I think one of them, I think that's really important to get across is and I see a question coming through on that, and that is in relation to the difference between ZyLAB and global search. So I think Jan might answer that for me later, but is the ability to do deep searching on your archives. So what is happening a lot is that documentation is being sent to people via scanned documents. I think people visually communicate more with each other by using screenshots and so on. There's a lot of tools out there that allow people to make screenshots and communicate to people about messages, instructions, and so on. So it's so the ability to be able to do a deep processing is very important to get a really complete access request. One of the other great functions within we found with ZyLAB is around its whole ability to do entity extractions, and that's really comes around in relation to redactions and auto redactions. I suppose, and this is probably one of the biggest challenges going forward from what we see in an Irish context, is the whole redaction process. It's not what you need to redact, it's more redacting everything but not these names. So if we think of individuals in terms of, if we take an example of an employment case where there's an access request by the requester, basically what is often required is that we redact every other name excluding that person or the people that person is involved with. So that's a massive challenge. So the ability to be able to extract names and outside the system decide which ones that you don't want to extract, so that you can run the application against it for auto redaction is huge. The production and end-to-end, I suppose really what we would see, and our big attraction about being with ZyLAB and Informa with ZyLAB for 20 years, 1998, is the one roof concept. So in other words, that all documentation, regardless of whether it's paper, file share, email, social media, everything is presented under the one platform. So you're not using a myriad of systems to try and fulfill that information access request. And that's, I think, what people find most challenging going forward, is that there are so many different systems that they need to use to pull together an access request. And then the management of the review, once they have that information, is cumbersome, to say the least.
Yep.
So the collection, I think you would have seen at the very start, that's something that we've worked directly with ourselves with ZyLAB over the last 2 years. It's a huge, it's the ability for individuals to use the technology to do their own collections. So as you say, you can very simply browse to the locations that you want to do your access requests on. So sometimes there will be a combination of enterprise search systems which will present groups of documents or collections of documents to an area, where ZyLAB will then go and upload, process, and do deep searching on that selected information. So for me, with ZyLAB, it's really about the end-to-end. It's that you have a start from the collection and that you finish on that those documents that are produced with their redactions, with their listings, and that it's all done under the one system. It presents a full audit trail, so everybody knows where their information is and where it came from. And it also audits the actions in terms of the individuals. So whoever is managing that access request, all their actions that they have taken with regards to determining whether a document is privileged and can be excluded from that, if it has an exemption, everything is tracked from end to end. And that's one of the things that makes clients very comfortable in dealing with this system.
Yeah, and what I would like to add to this is that our architecture is very scalable. We run this in private or in other cloud environments, where it's very easy for us to add CPU and memory on the fly. We don't need to reinstall the software or redeploy the data. So if you do happen a lot of data and you don't make your deadline and you need more power, then we can dynamically add it to the system, and that's a major advantage over a lot of other products. Okay, now I would highly encourage you to sign up for our community, even if you're not a client yet, but you can find a lot of technical information and resources, other webinars, white papers, ebooks, documentation and videos on our product. You can even sign up for our training and becoming a ZyLAB authorized reviewer, or ZyLAB authorized certified administrator. And all of the information that you need for that is available on our community. ZyLAB, facts never lie. That's what we help you to do. We help you to on your truth finding missions. And there's a lot of ebooks that you can also download from our website. Now, there were a couple of questions, and I've seen them coming in, and one of them you already mentioned is, Tom. It's what's the difference of ZyLAB and a enterprise search product? Well, what I can say is very simple, is we actually help a lot of clients worldwide that start by using enterprise search, and then they use tools like Adobe, where they manually redact and then disclose that. Well, that's a huge difference with the ZyLAB platform. Once for all, you can still use these enterprise search products. We actually encourage you to do so. Then you can upload the data in our system, and then a lot of the redaction will be automatic. The reviewing will be more consistent. You will keep an archive of all your past disclosures, and whenever you disclose a document again, you can see how it was redacted in the past, so you don't redact it or you don't disclose it without the redactions. The production, the reporting, it's a major productivity revolution compared to a lot of other products. I also saw another question coming in is, what is the quality level that one can reach? Is it 100%? Now, that's a very good question, and I presume this is related to the quality level of the redactions. Well, we can never guarantee 100% because at the end of the day, the technology is very good but not perfect. Also, it could be that there's like names that are very, very common, used by very common words that the computer misses. But let me also tell you, in general, the performance of the best humans when they classify documents or search or redact documents is around 80%, and this is the best humans. Normal humans perform typically sometimes 40 to 50%. They make a lot of errors, and the reason is that a lot of this type of work is very boring, and also human beings are cognitively just not capable of dealing with millions and millions of pages and redactions. And they take different decisions. They take different decisions not only between different people, but also Monday morning they take a different decision than Friday afternoon. And computers are much more consistent. They can easily achieve quality levels well over 80%, and we've been in projects where we actually do a couple of cycles where we use text mining to identify names, then we redact them, then we produce them, then we review them, and then by taking a random sample and we find certain errors, then we fix those errors by adding more redaction rules. And if you do that like 6-7 times, we've had processes where we reach 97-98% accuracy, which is really very, very high and good enough for most of our clients. Now, if you want to have better accuracy, then you just have to continue doing these samples or look at every document. But then, that will be a very expensive effort. So what we offer is a very good balance between quality of the redactions and the cost of the rejections process, where you can also more or less guarantee that you have reached a certain quality level by using random sampling.
One of the last questions there that I see, Jan, is in relation to do any large cases to justify costs. I suppose I can just answer this from our own experience, is that I kind of tend to argue the opposite in terms of if you can take a small case and run it through and get a process in place that's repeatable, then you've done huge learning yourself to then apply it to a larger case. So rather than waiting for that big mountain to come towards you, if you find something small that you think may be suitable, adapt it for the technology, and it can be low cost. We're talking, typically here in Ireland when I'm doing this sort of work, you're starting at €1,500 upwards for a single issue, and so it is very, and as you say, it's completely scalable, so it doesn't matter what the data size is. But my view is always to encourage people to start with a smaller set where they can apply a process that's repeatable for themselves, that works for themselves.
Yeah, well, and we should not forget, Tom, that a gigabyte of email data is also 5,000 pages. So it's a lot of work if you have to redact it or review it. So even these small data sets can be very labor intensive.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, I don't see any questions. If you do have any questions, feel free to send us an email. We thank you very much for your attendance, and we're exactly at the top of the hour now. Tom, thank you very much for helping us out in the webinar, and we hope to see you back in one of our future webinars. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.